What's up, everyone? Welcome to our Thursday night pregame show for week 2. I'm Tera Roberts, and I'm here with my co-host, Adam Ronis. Adam, how did last week treat you?
Week 1 was actually pretty good. I won a lot of my leagues, so I was pretty content about that. It's only 1 week, though, so you never get too high or too low. It's a long season. I did have one team that got battered by injuries, though. Lost Jerry Jeudy, Michael Gallup, Odell Beckham didn't play. So that team is already in a little bit of a deep hole, but I'll figure out a way to get through it. But overall, it was a good week. I had a lot of those big wide receivers that performed. I had Dak Prescott. So Tyler Lockett was one of the guys that I really loved this year. I thought he was so undervalued in the 4th round of many drafts. So overall, it was a good week 1, and you just hope that you can continue it in week 2.
Same, yeah, it was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. I did good in my industry leagues, and then I bombed in my home leagues, and I realized something about myself. I care more about the home leagues than I do anything else.
Well, yeah,
it was painful.
Look, I want to do great in every league I'm in, but realistically, when you play in 10 to 15 leagues, you just can't. I want to do well in my money leagues. Maybe for you, maybe because you're up and coming in this industry, so you want to make your mark. I get that.
Yeah.
I've been around a while, so I feel like whatever. I want to win my money leagues, my high stakes leagues. I put that as the top priority.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to do well in every league because my name's on it. My name's on something. I got to represent.
Exactly. Yeah, my favorite home league is with my brother and his friends, and we like to trash talk each other in group chats. And I'm just trying to stay face, and
yeah, you gotta kick their ass. So make sure you handle business there.
But I'm ready to get started. We are previewing tonight's game with the Giants and the Washington football team. We are running through hot topics, players of the week. Lots of hot topics today. I think you guys know where we're heading with this. And then we're going to be taking questions from the Fantasy Alarm and DFS Alarm Discord. So if you guys have any questions, jump on into the Fantasy Alarm or the DFS Alarm Discord, submit your questions there into the chat, and we will be answering them live. But before we kick off the show, Fantasy Alarm has teamed up with Yahoo Daily Fantasy this season to offer you a whole new DFS experience. Why swim with the sharks when you can play weekly, daily fantasy games with fair opponents on Yahoo? For a limited time, get free 25-entry contest credit after your first deposit with the promo code ALARM. All you have to do is go to fantasyalarm.com/Yahoo for more details. And backed by popular demand, for week 2, we are doing another 2K free roll contest just for our subscribers, with $500 going to the winner again. So join our free roll contest with Yahoo Daily Fantasy now by going to fantasyalarm.com/free roll and get into the action. So what do you have to lose? Come on, sign up with Yahoo Daily Fantasy today and join the hashtag family and winning. Now let's dive into the hot topics of the week. Yeah, they're hot. They're really hot. We're ready to go. It's San Francisco. We'll start off with the mind of Kyle Shanahan. Let's start off with what could be the most painful one for most of our viewers. We'll start off with the Ayuk situation. From my perspective, I know you've seen it. I know pretty much everyone has seen it. The video of Shanahan talking about Ayuk and what seems to be like he felt that because Ayuk missed time due to the hamstring injury, that maybe it warranted him having to re-show his effort, work his way back into it, that, Trent Sherfield really showcased himself and gave him the opportunity to showcase his talents more and earn a little more space. But how are you feeling about it?
You can't feel good no matter how you talk about it. I know the people who drafted him in round 4 or 5 want to be optimistic, but you have to look at it realistically. And right now, I don't see how you can put this guy in the lineup this week. I have him buried in my rankings at Fantasy Alarm. And maybe he has a good game, but, he didn't play a full complement of snaps. He wasn't getting targets, and Kyle Shanahan really didn't speak positively again this week. So I think it's a situation where you just hold on to him. You hope it gets better. We know how talented he is, but we've seen in this offense, it's going to be hard for all of these guys to produce because they're primarily going to be a team that runs the football. Now, last week was a case where the final score, if you're just looking at the final score, you're like, oh, wow, they only won by 8. They were up 28 in that game. So they just scaled it back. So there'll be more competitive games where maybe they have to throw a bit more, but it's just tough to see Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Ayuk all producing. And Ayuk was the guy, at least in the wide receiver core, went the highest. So I think you just have to be patient and hold on and just hope, because we know how talented he is. We saw it last year. There are other reports too that he wasn't being a professional, whatever that means. Every coach has a different definition, but yeah, I mean, this is a situation this week where I just don't see how you can play him unless you're absolutely desperate, because you could run into a situation like last week.
Yeah, exactly. I did bench him in the several leagues that I have him in. It's such a weird situation, because you would think with a guy who he spent enough time in 2020 showcasing his capabilities. So it seems like it really is boiling down to something outside of that talent and having to prove himself.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is sometimes we don't know what goes on. I mean, this was definitely a big shock to everyone in week one. There were probably a lot of people like, oh, he's healthy, he's good to go. All right, I'm putting him in the lineup. Could have a good week against Detroit. And then we're watching like, wait, why isn't he on the field? So, yeah, it's a lot of weirdness going on in San Francisco. We're just not getting great reports from the reporters out there.
Yeah, and then moving on to the running backs, crazy situation. I think a lot of us really had it as Mostert, Sermon, Elijah Mitchell, not even thinking about Jermichael Hasty. With Mostert going down, I know that, we thought that Sermon would have the opportunity at some point, because there is that injury history. And, we felt like it was bound to happen at some point that Sermon would be able to get to showcase that opportunity as soon as Mostert went down. And here he is, and there we are last week when we get that sudden report of inactive coming through literally, what was it, an hour and a half before the game. It's crazy. And, what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's an absolute mess. We know Mostert's out for the season, so we all think Elijah Mitchell is the guy based on what we saw last week. But as you mentioned, Chase Sermon was inactive, and there are some rumors that it was disciplinary, and to me, it could be. Maybe you say, hey, we need to teach this guy a lesson early, and what better game to do it than against Detroit, where they have no problem, they're going to win. So what happens this week? So if you have Sermon, there's no way you should be dropping him. Will we be surprised if Sermon is the lead back this week? No. I mean, you would think, though, logically, that it's probably going to be Mitchell, and people paid a lot of money for him off the waiver wire. I mean, there was one high-stakes leagues, the NFFC Online Championship. Someone spent all $1,000 of their budget, which means they cannot make a move the rest of the year. There's no first come, no first serve. There's no $0 bids. I know I've seen leagues, $715, $560. I mean, he went for a lot of money. So people are hoping that he can become the lead back, but we've never seen one guy in this San Francisco system under Shanahan be the main lead back. They use multiple running backs. So I think this week you're starting Mitchell. Sermon I have ranked as RB4. I do expect to see him play, but it's kind of unpredictable what's going to go on here at this point. But Mitchell would be the guy you start based on what you saw last week. Like, there's no indication to say, hey, they're going to go away from Mitchell. Why would you? We saw what he did last week. But at the same time, would you be surprised if it's a 50-50 split, or, Mitchell gets most of the touches, then Sermon, then Hasty, as they're going up against Philadelphia, who's coming off a very impressive performance last week, albeit it was Atlanta and a terrible offensive line. But, yeah, I mean, we're going to look back and either go, wow, the people got Mitchell, even though they spent all the money, they're geniuses. This is James Robinson last year. Or we're going to look back and go, boy, they wasted a lot of money. So we're not going to get that answer probably for several weeks. We might get an answer in the next couple of weeks. That would be bad for the people who paid for Mitchell. But, yeah, I mean, we've been through this with the San Francisco backfield before. So I put in bids, but they were not high enough.
I did put in, I had one league where it was just a reverse order. And surprise, surprise, that was my home league where I bombed, and there we go, got Elijah Mitchell. But I did bid for him on a $1,000 fab. I think I did like $550. I wanted to go. I had acres, so I'm a little bit running back deficient, and I was willing to risk it, but not risk it all. And I got outbid, of course, and unfortunately. But yeah, it's weird because we truly don't have any idea which direction it's heading. Before the season started, beat writers were incredibly adamant. And it wasn't just one or two. It was like across the board about the order. And it was so strong that, we were hearing reports that Sermon could even step up and, be taking half the carries right off the bat, feeling very confident about his position. And so for it, I saw where it came out right now, where it was confirmed that, everyone did think that was it, and now it's completely reversed out of nowhere. But they did have the feeling that it was, in fact, Thurman to start off with.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And you saw him going in the, anywhere from rounds 5 to 7, depending on what type of league you were in, because you want a running back in the system. And we all knew that Mostert more than likely was not going to make it through the year. Now, it sucks that he only had 2 carries. I had money on him to score anytime touchdown in that game. And I know he would have. He definitely would have. There's no doubt he would have scored because we saw how successful their backs were. Hasty and Mitchell scored. So it's unfortunate. But, yeah, this is a situation that we want a piece of. But it's like, is it going to be Mitchell for the whole season? Is it going to be a few weeks? So it is one of the big backfields that we're watching, especially this week in week 2 as they oppose Philadelphia.
Yeah, and then we'll keep it going with the running backs. We'll head over to the Ravens running backs. Yet again, we're going to talk about them. I think this is going to be a recurring theme with Hot Topics. We started off with Tyson Williams in the first half, looking great, getting majority of carries. And then lo and behold, in the second half, a little bit of problems. And then we saw Latavius Murray coming in. And then we've got the Ravens coaches come in saying, all backs are going to be used. And the signing of Devonta Freeman, Le'Veon Bell still in the practice squad, but assuming once he gets his legs underneath him that he might be one of those people that rolls back up, how are we feeling about this? Are we still confident in Tyson, or are we feeling like it's going to be more of a committee situation where they really are sticking with whoever is in that backfield?
Yeah, it looks like a committee, and I think it was Greg Roman, their offensive coordinator, and came out and said, we're just not going with one back. So they showed more confidence with Latavius Murray down the stretch, which is a little discouraging because he just got to the team. So now he's got a full week of practice. Williams, I thought, looked good catching the football. He had some explosiveness on that 30-plus yard run, but he also did have some issues with pass protection. So you hope they can work on that with him. That's kind of a willingness to block, and we've seen backs get better at it. So that's something to keep an eye on because, he did catch the football out of the backfield. I think he had 3 receptions. So you like to see that. But, if he's not going to get the snaps, it's a problem. So, I had to lower him. Like I thought last week he was a solid RB2. I don't think he is this week. You have to lower him. It's still a good situation, even though they do have issues on the offensive line. I mean, the Ravens have been hit hard by injuries on both sides of the football. And I think it took a toll for them on Monday night. And it looks like Devonta Freeman's going to be active this week. I mean, I don't think he's going to do much, but if that's another guy that they're going to incorporate it, that's going to take touches away from Murray and Williams. And let's not forget, Lamar Jackson had 12 carries in that game, and we know he's going to run. So, yeah, I was feeling really good about Williams, happy that I drafted him in like rounds 13 and 14. I was like, okay, now I got my RB2 that I've been searching for. I don't feel that way right now. Again, it could change. You hope that he gets better at pass protection. Latavius Murray didn't look great, but he's serviceable and he's a veteran. And sometimes coaches like that. Doesn't matter. They don't care if Latavius Murray can't break a 40-yard run. Hey, just pick up the yards that are blocked. And if you can't break tackles, break big runs, it's okay. So, yeah, that's another backfield that looks like it's going to be a headache. And again, these are 2 backfields that you want to invest in because we've seen how productive that 49ers run game has been under Kyle Shanahan. And we know same thing with the Ravens, especially with Lamar Jackson at quarterback and defense is having to account for him. It opens up bigger running lanes. So it kind of sucks that we can't really rely on any one back in 2 great running systems.
Yeah. And speaking of relying, we've got a new quarterback in town in Washington. And we've had Ryan Fitzpatrick go down, unfortunately, and Taylor Heineke in. And, are we going to be able to depend on the Washington offense? Who are we? I mean, I assume we're still sticking, Gibson's going to be fine. He's not really something that's going to affect him majorly. But then we get to the pass catchers. We've got Terry McLaurin. Then we've got Logan Thomas, who had a little bit of a subpar week last week. Is this something that benefits him more? Then we've got the secondary guys. We don't really know who's stepping up yet. But how do you see this affecting the pass catchers?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that bad. I mean, Fitzpatrick was a guy that would take shots deep, and we thought that would open things up for a guy like McLaurin especially. But we saw Heineke come in last year in the playoffs and play pretty well against Tampa Bay, can run a little bit. So I don't think it's going to cripple the offense. I think McLaurin will be fine. Logan Thomas will be fine. Gibson, I think it was very encouraging to see his usage last week. and he was involved in the passing game as well. We didn't see much J.D. McKissick. So that's maybe something to keep an eye on, because Fitzpatrick really wasn't checking down. Does Heineke, and does that maybe result in a little bit more action from McKissick? Just something to keep an eye on. But I think you feel good about Gibson. I mean, you pretty much know where you're going in this offense. I thought it could hurt maybe Deandre Brown. I mean, that was a guy that I picked up when I saw Curtis Samuel. I mean, he was someone I was looking at in round 19 or 20. Yeah. And then I saw Curtis Samuel go down. I picked him up. I think he played 51 of 55 snaps last week, which is encouraging. Now, he really didn't do much, but the fact that he was on the field that much, I think, is a good sign. And, he's a real cheap DFS play for the showdown slate tonight. So I think he's 1,900 on DraftKings, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's a guy that you could throw in there. And at that price, you just need him to make one play. So, but that was pretty much all we were looking at on this team anyway, right? So
yeah.
I think you just kind of continue to roll with the regular players there.
Yeah. And then maybe let's talk about the bounce back teams, and then we'll dive more into that Washington Giants game. We've got two of them that were very surprising last week. One of them was sadly my Packers, and then the other being the Tennessee Titans, who kind of sent us for a little bit of confusion there, both of them. We expected a whole lot more out of those offenses. Are we ringing any alarm bells? Are we good to go? They're going to bounce back. We're fine. Don't panic.
I think the Packers, you just throw it away. For some reason, Aaron Rodgers' last two games in Florida have been atrocious. I don't know what it is. And it's not like it's Miami or South Beach. It was Jacksonville last week on a neutral field. And then last year, he got trounced in Tampa Bay. So I don't know what it is about Florida for Aaron Rodgers in his last two games. But they're home this week against Detroit. And Detroit's just a bad team. And last year, Green Bay at home against Detroit won 42-21. So this looks like a real bounce back spot. And you just throw that game away. So I think you do see Green Bay bounce back for sure. And with Tennessee too, I think they bounce back as well. That was just an atrocious performance for them last week. They just were not ready. They got smacked in the face. I know they got a new offensive coordinator. Ryan Tannehill really didn't get to work with Julio Jones too much. Julio Jones just could not get open. Derrick Henry was stopped. The offensive line wasn't good. They have a road game this week in Seattle, and they're dogs by 5.5, but I think they're going to show up and play much better. So that's the thing. People do this every year. Week one, we get some crazy performances, and people think, that's that team for the whole year. And it could be, but at the same time, we see teams every year just have games where they're just not ready for whatever reason it is. And I think you saw with those two teams last week. So I think they're both going to bounce back. Green Bay obviously should win. They're favored by 10.5 at home on Monday night. If they don't bounce back and they don't look good, then you start to question, hey, where's Aaron Rodgers' head right now? Because I think I saw a quote from him. He's like, I don't have to prove anything. So I expect them to bounce back. But if they don't and they struggle, then you start to get concerned.
Yeah. So let's dive into previewing the game, and then we'll dive into some questions from Discord. From a fantasy perspective, this is a very interesting game because we don't have a lot of as many playable action within it as we did last week when we had Tampa Bay and Dallas, where we pretty much were running through it, start, and then you get to this game. Which was probably going to be a good, entertaining game from that standpoint. But from a fantasy perspective, we've got a few concerns. Let's start at running back with where we talked about Gibson. We're good on Gibson, but what about Saquon? I know he's active now, but is he active enough for us to want to put him in our lineup?
Yeah, it's really difficult to. There's major concern here coming off the torn ACL and MCL. He played less than 50% of the snaps last week. He had 10 carries and 3 targets. We're probably looking at a similar role this week. I just can't see them on a short week ramping it up. And then on top of that, you have a difficult matchup here against the Washington defense, which is really good. So I just don't see how you can play him. I mean, unless you're putting in 100 lineups and you want to be contrarian and go, hey, maybe a lot of people are not going to play Barkley. And what if he gets 2 short goal line carries and catches 3 passes? Well, then you put yourself ahead of the field. So that's the thing. When you're playing in a big tournament, 1-game showdown slate, you could pretty much play anyone because a lot of it comes down to ownership percentage. And I would think that Barkley's probably not going to have the high ownership tonight. But again, you don't really want to rely on someone that's going to play 50% of the snaps and maybe get 13 touches on an offense that is probably going to struggle to put up points against this Washington defense.
Yeah, exactly. And then moving on to the wide receivers, from a DFS perspective, we've got a couple that are down there in pricing. From a fantasy perspective, it's a little bit more shallow in terms of who we can start. I know we're looking at Terry McLaurin, saying that we're still comfortable with him. We've got Kenny Goliday, who was a bit of an odd situation. He looked great last week. I watched the game and he looked good. I didn't see any signs of injuries, but again, it looked unfortunately like Daniel Jones was still kind of Daniel Jones. I was hoping he would, be able to recover from last year, get back to that rookie year a little bit more, but it seems like he's still struggling.
Yeah, I mean, they paid him big money and he only had 6 targets, but again, he's a big play threat and, he can score a 40-yard touchdown and that would be big considering the game total is 40.5. We don't expect a lot of points tonight. Shepard obviously was the top target last week. He just seems to have that rapport with Daniel Jones and scored last week. So I think Shepard will probably get the higher ownership, which means, Goliday is not a bad play. Yeah. There's Darius Slayton there as well. If you want to go really cheap, I know the coaching staff was talking up Kadarius Toney. We'll see how much he plays. But you know what? You could also use both defenses. If you truly believe it's going to be a low-scoring game, then both defenses are in play as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sterling Shepard is sitting at $13 on Yahoo, Darius Slayton at $11, and then Kadarius Toney at $10. So you've got several that you can work around with. Deandre Brown's at $10 as well. So we've got a lot of low bets in this one. Then moving on to tight end again, unfortunately, Evan Ingram out. We got, Logan Thomas. Are we throwing him a chance or throwing a little shot over there? He's $17 on Yahoo, which might be a little bit pricey for a little bit of an unknown at tight end.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he might be popular. He played 100% of the snaps last week. So we've seen in the past that Heineke has looked for him. Giants are not great against the tight end. So, but the thing is, if you think he's going to be popular, it's not the worst thing in the world to not play him if you think, he's not going to come through. So, he could be someone that you fade. Again, there's so many different ways to put together a lineup. And, again, the defenses are not bad. I mean, Antonio Gibson's probably going to be, I would think, the highest owned player in this game, right? Mm-hmm, so, and it's hard to not play him. Whenever you have someone they're going to be highly owned. But again, it's one game, and they're going to run the football. Gibson can catch. So it's hard not to take a look at Gibson.
Yeah. And then maybe from a showdown perspective, is there anyone that you're hanging your hat on for a captain?
I mean, I think Gibson is obvious. I know last week I went Antonio Brown, which was a little bit against because there were so many options. I don't think salary will be a factor here. Again, if you want to really save some money, again, it's a risk, Deandre Brown, because he played so many snaps last week, and I know he didn't do much. So people might go, oh, yeah, he only had 1 catch for -2 yards. Why would I play him? But he was on the field a lot. Now he gets a full week of practice with Heineke, so he could be someone. But, yeah, I mean, people are going to go Gibson, McLaurin. Heineke's not that bad. He can run a little bit, too. I would consider him. And then I think on the Giants side, people will look at Shepard and Goliday. So I think Gibson is probably going to be the obvious play. But sometimes maybe you just take the obvious, right? Get your points and go differentiate elsewhere. Exactly.
All right. And then let's head over to Discord and pull some questions from over there. We'll start off with Zaggy J. Shepard, Corey Davis, or Aguilar, half PPR, pick 2.
All right, I think you got to go with Corey Davis. I know it's the Patriots, and I am concerned Bill Belichick going against the rookie quarterback. He's probably going to really shut him down. But the target share is just ridiculous. So I think you got to go with Corey Davis. And you said this was PPR?
Half PPR.
Half point PPR. I know Shepard was really good last week. Aguilar against the Jets was pretty good. I'll go with Shepard here. I know he's got a tougher matchup this week, but I think he's in line to get more targets. Aguilar, not a bad play because we saw him produce well last year and was solid last week. But you got Jacoby Myers, you got James White, you got the tight ends. I know Jonnu Smith showed up on an injury report with a hip injury. I'm assuming it happened when he was flipped over and hit the ground hard. I was like, no, please get up. And he did. He finished the game. But sometimes these things linger a few days later. So I would go Corey Davis and Shepard.
And then we've got a full PPR question for tight end, Pitts or Logan Thomas.
Yeah, I think you got to go with Pitts. You know, I know people are a little upset at what happened with Pitts last week, but he got the targets. It was just a game where they just totally fell apart. And you could say, well, what about Tampa? Their defense is good. Yeah, but here's the thing. I think people should start learning what Dallas did last week. Dallas had a smart game plan. They said, you know what? We're not going to run Zeke. We're not going to waste our time running against this defense. And we have no Zach Martin. We're just going to come out and pass. And Atlanta's probably going to have to do that. They're probably going to be playing from behind. So I think you go right back to Pitts. Yeah, I mean, you drafted this guy early for a reason. I know the results weren't there week 1, but the targets were there. So I'm going right back to Pitts.
I agree. And it's not like you look at that game and look at the stats and say that he underperformed and everyone else was fantastic. I mean, it'd be one thing if Ridley had some kind of amazing, huge target game, lots of yardage, but he didn't. So it was more so just that game in particular. I can't imagine that, there's not going to be a little bit of bounce back there with Matt Ryan as well. And then, now that you mention it, I feel like I was remiss to not recap that nice game between Tampa and Dallas. It was a really good game in terms of the back and forth there. Very surprised by Dallas. They didn't get the win, but they did perform very well, aside from leaving a little bit too much time on the clock. Aside from that, really great. What were your thoughts around that other than, being a little bit proud of your boys?
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed in the end because they didn't win and they could have. They did play well. I knew once they left a minute 32 left, I'm like, yeah, well, we all know Brady's marching down the field, whether it's a touchdown or field goal. So that was the discouraging part. But, offense played well. Dak Prescott, there were times where he didn't look 100%, but, he got the job done. And they could have beaten the defending champions on the road to open the season, and they were shorthanded. So it sucks because they lost. That's the bottom line. You need the wins, and they didn't get it. But it definitely was an encouraging performance because I think a lot of people thought they were going to get hammered. And I didn't think they would win. I knew they would give up points, but I did like the points last week because it got up to 9. So I loved Dallas getting 9. And, now we'll see what happens this week. They have another game that's, and I'm sure many of the Dallas games are going to project over 53. It's 55 and a half total against the Chargers. And the Chargers are going to put up points this week again because DeMarcus Lawrence is out. He's their best pass rusher. And Randy Gregory's likely not playing either due to COVID. So they have nothing on the defensive line. And the Chargers offensive line is really good. I've talked about it all preseason about this. They have not had an offensive line this good for a long time. It's always been a problem and Achilles heel for this team. So they're going to put up points against Dallas this week.
Yeah, my personal favorite part of the game was Amari Cooper coming in there and staking his claim to that number 1 spot. What a game. Yeah, do you see that continuing? I know, CD looked great as well. There's a little bit of questionable things going on with his hands there in terms of, but he got tons of targets. So obviously he's going to be very involved in the game as well if he can just pull up the efficiency perspective together. But how do you see that shaking out there?
Yeah, they're going to be great all year. They're both borderline wide receiver 1s. I mean, this week on Yahoo for DFS, Cooper's 24, Lamb's 23. Like, that is insane. They're both outside the top 15 in wide receiver pricing. So, very affordable. Look, Cooper was undervalued. I didn't undervalue him as much as many. I think I had him ranked 14th at wide receiver going into the year, but I got him in my home league on the 3-4 turn. So I was looking to take Cooper because he's been so productive with Dak. I was concerned early in camp, but once he played in the preseason, I said, okay, that's fine, because he had that ankle surgery in January, and it looked like it was slow to come back, and you were starting to get a little worried. But once he played in that preseason game, I'm like, all right, he's good to go. And Lamb, like you said, could have had a bigger game. He had that drop over the middle that resulted in an interception, but he still had 15 targets, and Cooper had 16. And yes, they're not gonna have that many pass attempts every week. But then again, their defense is so bad and they run at such a fast pace that maybe they will. I mean, but you're not counting that every week, but they're both going to be highly productive. And Michael Gallup being out maybe gives each of them more targets. They still have the 2 tight ends with Jarwin and Schultz, and Cedric Wilson will come in, but they're going to be a highly productive offense. We saw it last year in the 4 games Dak was healthy. And we saw it in week 1 against a very good Tampa Bay defense.
And then Zeke as well. I know a lot of people are like, were, understandably upset about the amount of production, but from my perspective, it's not really a panic situation because it felt more like just a game script situation where they thought that was just the best way. And plus, Zeke's a great blocker, so he was able to help out in that aspect as well with the trouble on the offensive line. So, thoughts around Zeke is a bounce back as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, that's going to be his worst game of the year. And trust me, I know I have Zeke in a couple leagues. It sucks to see him not produce, especially in week 1 when you spend an early pick. But again, I thought it made absolute sense what they were doing. And I was actually surprised because I felt like the Cowboys were one of those teams like, well, Zeke's our guy and our running game is strong and we're just going to keep running at you. Oh, and we don't care if you stop it. And they were smart. They said, you know what? Tampa Bay is really strong against the run. We're not even going to bother. We're just going to keep passing. So that's not going to happen every week. And they have some better matchups ahead. So Zeke will be fine. He was on the field for 82% of the snaps, and that's what you want. You want a back who's on the field. I wish they would have thrown him more of that game. That would have been better, but he's going to be on the field. Yes, there was a lot of Tony Pollard in that game, but Zeke will be fine going forward. I just think they said Tampa is so staunch against the run the last couple of years that they didn't want to bother with it, and it made sense, especially with Zach Martin out. So, yeah, Zeke will bounce back.
Exactly. Now, moving back to questions in Discord, we've got a question regarding running backs, need to start 2. Barkley, Jacobs, and Javonte Williams. This is timely. He's got Barkley. I hope he's listening. He or her.
Yeah. Look, in this instance, you probably have to start Barkley and Javonte Williams. Jacobs is on the injury report. It's a short week, and he was banged up. He was in and out of that game. Like, he limped to the sideline a couple times. And he's going against the Steelers. Good defense. They did give up a decent amount of yards to Singletary, but he was only 11 carries. But Jacobs is touchdown dependent. And also, when they trail, you won't see him on the field as much. So everyone's excited for Josh Jacobs last week. He didn't do much on the ground. He had 2 touchdowns, and you can't count on touchdowns every week. So in case Jacobs sits, again, you never worry. You don't panic about a Thursday practice. It's just you're like, okay, now I have to be concerned. And it is a short week, but he is banged up, and it's a difficult matchup. So I'll take my chances with Barkley and hope that he can find the end zone, catch a couple passes tonight.
I like that take. And then moving on, we've got more Javonte Williams. I think this is going to be considering who they're playing, it's probably going to be a very common question. So I can maybe see where you're heading with this, but Sony Michel or Javonte Williams for season-long RB stash PPR?
Oh, it's got to be Javonte Williams for sure. I mean, look, I know Melvin Gordon had the long 70-yard run last week, but it was kind of an even split. They really like Williams. And with Sony Michel, I know he just got to the team, but he had 3 touches? He barely played. Now, it could change. It maybe his role increases and he cuts into Henderson. But right now, based on what we see, it's got to be Javonte Williams because they drafted him high. They've been, most veterans you would have thought, all right, Gordon's going to get 70%. But no, it was pretty much a 50-50 split. Gordon just happened to, the Giants defense was probably gassed a little bit. They wanted to field a lot. Gordon just happened to break the long run. But I got to go with Javonte Williams.
Yeah, and the way that Sean McVay has spoken about Darrell Henderson has really made me feel like he's the clear number 1 back. It's not going to be a situation like last year. And when you look at last year, I mean, Sean McVay, it wasn't really a Kyle Shanahan situation where we were being shifty or a little bit, we don't know which is going to go. We were pretty much told that it was going to be hot hand. Now, did we know which hot hand it was going to be? No, but he's been very adamant about the involvement of Henderson. So, yeah, I don't think Michel is anyone that we want to be holding on to as a stash over somebody like Javonte Williams long term.
Yeah, again, you could hold Michel, no doubt. I understand people doing that, but if you're comparing it to, it's Javonte Williams. He's already on the field producing, so, and he's got a great matchup this week against Jacksonville. It was a little bit tougher last week against Giants. I know the numbers weren't great, but, this is a week where the way Jacksonville looked last week, my goodness, against the Texans, I know they're home. Humidity, hot weather down there, but you got to think Denver's going to have success running the football this week.
Yep. And then moving on again, we've got a question from Freddie60. Start Landry or Patrick, full PPR? Interesting question, guys that are going to be a little bumped up due to injury.
Yeah, I mean, we know Odell Beckham is out. Landry scored a touchdown last week. I got to go with Landry here. He's the number one. And I know Cleveland's not a pass-heavy offense, but they're going against the Texans. They could probably have their way. The Browns should have won last week. I thought they had a chance to win last week. I loved them at plus 5.5. They were one of my top bets of the week. And then I had to sweat it out there in the end. I was like, oh, Kansas City, please don't score. They didn't. Cleveland got the ball back. Obviously, they couldn't score, but they did cover. But yeah, you got to go with Jarvis Landry, man. He's just been really productive. Patrick was a good waiver wire ad. I think he'll be good, but he's got Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, who I think definitely benefits with Jerry Jeudy being out. But Landry's the number one there. So I'm going Jarvis Landry.
Yep. And then speaking of Sutton, we've got Sutton versus Elijah Mitchell in flex.
Yeah, that's tough. Look, I think you have to go with Mitchell. And again, with the understanding this might not work out. It could be more servant, but why would you go away from Mitchell after what he did last week, right? It doesn't make sense. Now, Sutton is in a good spot too. I didn't draft any Cortland Sutton this year, and with no Jerry Jeudy, that helps Sutton because I think Jeudy was going to be the guy, and that was a real terrible injury last week for Jeudy because I think he was going to have a great year, but Sutton now should command more targets, but I'm going to go with Elijah Mitchell here, and with the thinking that he was productive last week. And even if Sermon is active and involved, you got to think Mitchell's still getting 12 to 15 touches, somewhere in that vicinity. So I'll go with Mitchell.
Yeah. Does who San Francisco is playing really affect it in facing the who are they facing? Eagles, yes. But we didn't really get to see a lot of that last week since Philadelphia was so incredibly up. The running game really didn't. I mean, Mike Davis was, but we didn't really get to see a lot of it just because they were playing from behind so much.
Yeah. So, and I just don't think Atlanta is very good anyway. And Philly may be better than we think. A lot of people were down on Philly. It was an impressive performance. Jalen Hurts played well. So maybe Philly is better than we think, but we'll find out this week. They have a much tougher test against San Francisco. Another that has injuries again, though. Last year I thought they were really snake bitten by injuries, but they already have injuries they're dealing with again this year. So that's definitely an interesting game this week to see how good Philly is, at least early in the year.
And then we've got a start question, need to start two in half PPR out of Kareem Hunt, Elijah Mitchell, Nyheim Hines, Mark Ingram, and Devin Singletary. It's a big list.
Yeah, I'm not going back to Ingram. That's probably the best game you're going to see this year. He had 26 carries. He only averaged 3.3 yards per carry. It wasn't impressive at all. I think Kareem Hunt's in a good spot, right? They should have their way with them, and we saw Hunt even get a rushing touchdown last week. It's a good spot, so I'll go Kareem Hunt. And then, did you mention Elijah Mitchell in there again?
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell.
Mm-hmm. I would go with him too. Yeah. I mean, look, I know Hines was good last week, and it seems like he's going to be involved in the offense, but I can't start him over Elijah Mitchell. But I do think you got to feel pretty good if you have Hines. But this was also a half-point PPR, so that dings him a little bit. Singletary, man, he looked pretty good last week, but they just don't want to run the football. They just don't. He had 11 carries, and Zach Moss was inactive. It was only Breida, so I think that hurts him a little bit. So, yeah, I'll go Mitchell and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, Zach Moss was, have you heard anything on that one? I have yet to see any information.
Yeah, I didn't see anything. That was the other surprising one. I know, I'm always tweeting out the inactives before the game, and I had to double check. I'm like, wait a second, someone have a account here? Made sure I went to the Bills official, and I'm like, oh yeah, Moss is inactive. So I know he was a little banged up in the preseason, but yeah, that was another surprising one.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got another start sit. This one is for tonight. We have half PPR between Sterling Shepard for tonight, and then holding off for Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, Robbie Anderson, I expected better last week. He only had that one reception. It was fortunate that it was a long touchdown. But I'm going to go with him. I think he'll be more involved in offense. We know Darnold is looking for him. Saints are a little bit banged up in the secondary. So I'm going to go with Robbie Anderson.
Yeah. Are you a believer in Darnold? Do you see that as and they're, playing New Orleans, who, interesting situation. Do we believe that New Orleans defense was really the reason that right there with the Packers failing so badly? Is it going to be a tough defensive matchup, or was it just a weird fluky thing? But How do you feel about a repeat performance by Darnold? Are we checking our expectations on that one?
Yeah, I mean, he went against the Jets. It was up and down. It was better as the game went along. But I just think that he's in a better situation, better coaching, better weapons. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, Christian McCaffrey. So, but I wouldn't be starting him this week against the Saints. That's for sure.
Yeah. Going back to Robbie Anderson, you mentioned Terrace Marshall, and we were a little surprising about the usage between the two. Are you getting the feeling that maybe there's going to be a little bit of movement upward by Terrace Marshall, or is Robbie Anderson going to be able to hold on that spot?
Yeah, I still have faith in Robbie Anderson. Marshall, obviously, we heard he had a great preseason, and he's playing the slot. He'll be involved, and I think he's someone you hold on to. But Robbie Anderson was so good last year, and again has that experience with Darnold. So again, it was just surprising that it was a 3-target week, but he did have that long catch for a touchdown. So I'm not losing faith in Robbie Anderson after 1 week.
Yeah. And then we'll continue on with Robbie Anderson. One more. Frankie has a question in Discord. Would you drop Robbie Anderson or DJ Chark for Goliday?
I would not drop Robbie Anderson. Look, I did not love Goliday going into the year, but I think you would take him. You probably take him over Chark, right? They paid him big money. When he's been healthy, he's been productive. I know Chark had a lot of targets last week. Didn't have the efficiency, although a lot of them were uncatchable. And Chark still has to deal with Laviska Shenault as well and Marvin Jones. But they will be passing a lot, playing from behind. But I think in this situation, I would take Goliday. Seems like a shallow league that you have to make that decision. Like you would think you would be able to hold all of them, but it could be a real shallow league. But I would go with Goliday over Chark.
Yeah. And then let's head back to, we're going to jump out of Discord. Just a reminder to everyone watching, if you want to ask a question, go into the Fantasy Alarm Discord or DFS Alarm Discord, enter your questions in there and we'll be answering them. We're going to drop over and talk about some of the surprises from last week and see if they will continue on to this week. I wanted to kick us off with a big surprise because this was another one of those weird pregame reports that we got with the Detroit running backs. We were hit with the Deandre Swift. We were feeling like, hey, he's good to go. He's 100%. All systems go. And then we were hit right before that with Deandre Swift might be a little limited. And then it turns out everything was all good with everybody. Deandre Swift and Jamal Williams were fantastic. I mean, from a fantasy perspective, they scored literally right around the same amount, very similar amount of carries, usage in the pass game. They seem to be completely fading the wide receivers as a whole, which bodes very well for both those backs being two very good pass catching backs. So are you surprised? Did you see it come in? And are you in on them for the entire season?
Yeah, look, I said it. There were 2 running backs that I felt like once draft season ended, that I would look back and be like, I could regret not taking him. DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders. They fell to the 4th round, sometimes the 5th. They had some question marks, but they're very talented. Both guys I had a lot of last year, and I have none this year. And I already feel like I am regretting it. Swift, look, we know the talent. Swift fell because of the injuries and the whole 1A, 1B with Jamal Williams. But the bottom line is, he's going to get the targets because, like you said, and that's the most important point, their wide receivers suck. No disrespect to them, but they're not good. Tyrell Williams already dealing with a concussion. So Swift is going to be second on that team in targets to TJ Hockenson. Now, I know Swift was on the injury report again with this groin issue, but again, it's Thursday. Relax. Jamal Williams, here's the thing you have to keep an eye on. I tweeted this early in the week. When you're looking at box scores, you have to take into context how many plays were run. Detroit ran 84 plays. Seattle ran 53. So Detroit's not running 84 plays every week. The game broke right for them. They were playing from behind. They got the onside kick. So they're not going to be that productive every week. And Jamal Williams played about half the snaps that Swift did. So Williams is more RB3. I have leagues where I'm using him at RB2 because I'm wide receiver heavy and I have an elite tight end. But Williams, this week, he's got his revenge game against your Packers. So maybe you look at him. But, yeah, those guys, Swift is going to be I think he could be an RB1 PPR formats. I mean, they're just going to use him a lot in the passing game. He looked good on that big run up the middle. And Jamal Williams will be fine, but just remember, Jamal Williams is just not going to have this every week. It was great last week, but it's just not going to happen every week. But Swift could be the guy, especially if he stays healthy, even if he doesn't get a lot of carries on the ground. He's going to get it done in the passing game. I expect him to play from behind. And, Goff went to his running backs and tight ends a lot. So I think you're looking at good things for DeAndre Swift. If you drafted him around 4, you're feeling great right now.
Yeah, Adam, I think we're of the same mindset here. I also, too, was like, I'm not really going to draft Swift. I'm not really going to draft Miles Sanders. I have absolutely no Miles Sanders. And the only reason that I even got one DeAndre Swift was because it was an auction league. And I was sitting there and I was like, this feels really cheap for Swift. I don't really want it to go this cheap. And I clicked it and nobody else outbid me. So I'm like, okay, well, here we go. But hey, it's working out. But moving on to our next surprise, we have Jameis Winston. I was a believer in Jameis Winston because I like a gunslinger and I felt like he was going to go out there and gunsling. He technically really didn't, more of a game script kind of situation. But yeah, I was not expecting that amount of touchdowns, that level of connection, those throws. He looked accurate. He looked very good. How surprised are you? And how are you feeling about it moving forward?
I've always liked Winston. His 30 for 30 season. I had a lot of them, and even though the interceptions piled up, it was more good than bad. He can finally see now with that LASIK eye surgery, so that's always good. But yeah, he's not gonna. I don't think we can count on him every week. I have him ranked as a high QB2 this week. I don't think he's a QB1. I did pick him up in a league as a backup quarterback. My starter is Dak, so obviously I'll roll with Dak every week, but I don't mind having Winston as a backup, a QB2. He just got a fortunate situation, a lot of short fields, and he had the 5 touchdowns. But it's an offense that doesn't have a lot of weapons. That's the problem until Michael Thomas comes back. I mean, maybe it also goes to show how solid he was, that he was able to do it with Callaway having a quiet game. Jawan Johnson had a couple touchdowns, Harris. But there's not a lot of weapons on this team. I think everything just broke right for them against Green Bay. But to me, he's a high QB2. So if he's out there, you want to back up. I'm sure he's gone by now. People picked him up. Maybe, and once he was named the starter, he started to be drafted a little bit. But yeah, I think he's a high QB2. He doesn't run much either. It's hard for those running quarterbacks to really be that QB1. As good as an Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady can be, they still never usually crack, top 5.
Yeah. I was looking at Yahoo roster ownership, and I think he was hitting right around, from season long perspective, was hitting right around somewhere between 70 and 60 ownership. So yeah, he's up there now. He's not a surprise. But moving on to a little less positive of a situation, we have Gesicki. I can't say that I was high on him per se, but I was not expecting that. That was a little like, especially in a game where we don't have the full weapons arsenal yet back. How are you feeling? Is this kind of situation where you're feeling like are you holding on and are you waiting, or is it looking like he's odd man out here?
You probably wait on him. I mean, it was weird. He didn't play a lot of snaps. I think it was around 20. But like you said, you had no Will Fuller. So you thought, all right, this game could be good. I know Will Fuller was not at practice today due to a personal situation. He's expected back from his 1-game suspension. You got Devontae Parker and Waddle. I think Gesicki is like one of those tight ends where he's going to be frustrating because people will drop him this week or bench him, and he has a good week. And you go, okay, I can put it back in. And then he's going to have a bad game in week 3. And then people are going to drop him again or bench him. And then week 4, he's going to be good. So that's why he's a tight end too, because it's going to be up and down. And a lot of the tight ends are like that, right? There's very few reliable. And I think we probably had this discussion. Maybe it was on the Andy Up podcast, but I was trying to get a top elite tight end. As the drafts went along, I was trying to. I was going to force it, but when you have a Travis Kelce, a Darren Waller, a TJ Hawkinson, life is so much better. When you set your lineups, you're just like, yeah, click. I don't have to worry about all these other tight ends. But I don't have them in all leagues. And I got Jonnu Smith and Cole Kmet and guys like that. But we all know they're going to have down weeks. So I think with Gesicki, I'm going to hold them. I don't want to overreact to one and see if that was game plan specific. But it is concerning because now you add Will Fuller to the mix, and we've seen Tua likes Waddle and Parker still there. So this is an offense that's probably not going to have enough fantasy production for all of those guys unless Tua really elevates his game to another level.
Yeah. And then we talked about this guy earlier, but I thought we could dive into it a little more from a perspective of not just this game, but how we're holding him for the rest of the season, when we think he's going to kick in. It's Saquon. We know he's limited right now, and we're not really expecting much. Are you panicking, or are you still saying, all right, he's just getting back into the swing of things? Do you have a date where you say, hey, 4 weeks in, 6 weeks in, I'm feeling uncomfortable?
Well, someone sent me a trade offer they got. I can't recall what it was, but it was a good one on getting Barkley cheap. So if you can't do that, I would. And, full disclosure, I was not drafting Barkley this year. I did say in my home league, I had picked 12. I'm like, if he makes it to 12, I might take him. I'm fortunate I didn't have to make that decision. He was taken before me, which I figured would happen since there's some Giants fans in that league. But yeah, look, here's the thing. If you drafted Barkley early, you cannot be surprised by this. We didn't know at first, would he play week 1? They were kind of hesitant on that. And we knew he would have a limited workload early on. Then you see the schedule, short week. So you cannot be surprised by this if you drafted Barkley. If you are surprised, you didn't look at the schedule and you weren't paying attention. Barkley was a guy if you drafted him, you knew, all right, I am drafting him for the second half of the season. I am drafting him to make a run in the postseason, have him full go for the playoffs. That's the way you drafted Barkley. So you've got to be patient if you have him. And here's the other thing. On the flip side, though, we all know there could be Barkley teams that are 0-2 after this week, and they're going to be panicking. They're like, oh, why'd I do this? That's the time to try and get a Barkley for cheap off that guy. For
sure. And then let's actually jump back into the Discord and wrap things up with questions. We'll try to go through these as quickly as possible, and we'll continue on with Saquon. Are we sitting Saquon in half PPR for Julio or Aguilar?
Yeah, probably for Julio. Probably a bounce back spot. I know it wasn't great last week. He had a bad penalty. He was criticized. But again, I think Tennessee bounces back this week. Seattle's defense is not what it was. So I would go with Julio there.
Yeah. And then need to start 2 out of Goliday, Mooney, Bryan Edwards, Gabe Davis, and Ruggs.
Oh, man. All right, I think you got to go with Goliday.
Yeah.
And look, Edwards I like, but man, he was shut out for 59 minutes. Yeah. Now going up against the Steelers, same thing with Ruggs, so kind of don't like them. And then who are the other two? It was
Mooney and Gabe Davis.
Oh, Mooney and Gabe Davis. Man, that's not good options. Jeez. Oh, boy. I mean, Mooney's got a better matchup against the Bengals.
True.
Davis scored a touchdown, but he still plays less. He's in there in 4 wide sets, and they run a lot of them. He was a little banged up. I'm going to go Mooney here, thinking that it's a better matchup against Cincinnati. I'll say this. If Andy Dalton doesn't win this week, and I think there's a chance they lose this game, I like Cincinnati. They better go to Fields in week 3.
Yeah.
This is the nice revenge game for Dalton, but if he can't beat the Bengals, time to take him out.
Yeah, if you can't throw on this team, we need to have a conversation. All right. And then we've got Shepard, Sutton, Melvin Gordon, or Javonte Williams. We are replacing Barkley.
How many? Just one?
Yep. Shepard, Sutton, Gordon, Williams.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with one of the running backs. I'll probably go Javonte. It's Javonte or Gordon. Obviously, it's a split. I know Gordon had the better week last week, but yeah, against Jacksonville, they should have no problem running the football. So I lean Javonte.
I agree with you. I would definitely one of those two. I would lean towards Gordon for me personally.
Look, it's a coin flip. Again, Gordon had the big run. Otherwise, it was pretty close.
Yeah. I think they're both going to have a fantastic game. The matchup is just really juicy for them. And then we've got a drop question. Carter for Gainwell.
The immediate, yes. I do think Carter eventually could emerge out of that backfield. Gainwell looked pretty good, and was involved in the offense. So it depends. I still have hope for Carter long term. I don't buy Tevin Coleman staying healthy. Ty Johnson played the most snaps last week. The Jets have some offensive line issues. Becton's out, so you can do that. Again, I personally probably would hold Carter long term. But Gainwell has the better value now if you need someone.
Yeah, agree. And then we have a question. Let's see. We've got Shepard or Goliday in PPR.
I know you're going Goliday, right? That's your guy?
I am. Yeah, I am. I would go Goliday. I think he's got the, it's the big play capabilities. I do think that Shepard might be seeing more targets just because of the way that Daniel Jones is behaving right now. But yeah, I'm going to go with the upside of Goliday personally.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. Again, they paid him a lot of money, and Shepard had the better game last week. But the concern I have with Goliday is the fit with Daniel Jones. Because Galladay's a guy that doesn't really get a lot of separation, and Stafford wasn't afraid to throw it up there. Jones, I feel like, might be more hesitant to do it. That's my concern about him long term over the course of the season, as well as the injuries, which is why I stayed away from him. But Galladay's going to have some games. I mean, I've always been a big fan of Goliday and the talent. I just didn't like the fit on this team.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got some questions that just came in. Tim Patrick or Shenault in PPR?
I'm probably going to go Patrick here. I know Shenault, it's close though, but I'm going to lean Patrick. He was productive last year when he filled in, and they got a good matchup against Jacksonville. So they both have to compete with other players, but Patrick could be, especially with Cortland Sutton just coming back. Patrick could be right there. So I'm gonna go with Patrick, and also Laviska. Denver's secondary is really good, and I know Jacksonville's going to be forced to pass this week, but they might not be very productive. This is a really tough matchup for them. I know they're home, but Denver's defense is good.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're looking for the safer floor, somebody who is going to produce, definitely Patrick. If you want to you need to get a little risky, because I think we're not going to see a lot of consistency between who's getting the targets with Shenault, Chark, Marvin Jones. Where the touchdowns heading just probably might be super consistent. Then we've got O'Shaughnessy that came in and actually got what do you get, 8 targets? Kind of crazy. So yeah, they're peppering everyone over there.
And they didn't run the ball at all. They ran the ball 16 times and passed 51. When the Texans' weakness is the run defense, it's mind-boggling what Jacksonville was doing. It's like, we'll just keep throwing, even though they're terrible. They had 4.8 yards per carry, and they abandoned the run. I think they're early in the game. 12 of their first 14 plays were pass plays. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. As a Shenault owner, I really need USC to give a call down to Jacksonville and just say hey.
Yeah, Urban. See, why don't you go out to the West?
Yeah. And then we've got full point PPR need 2 from this group: Marvin Jones, Russell Gage, Juju, Davante Adams, or Landry. Well, we got one smash there. Assuming
we're questioning Davante Adams now
in this group,
And you said Landry, right? Was one of them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I go with Landry again. No Beckham, great matchup against Houston. Yeah, I mean Landry in a good spot. So yeah, it's Landry and Davante Adams.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with Odell out. If Odell was playing, I might lean towards Juju.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that makes complete sense. And then we have question need 2 from this group: Barkley, Tyson Williams, and Mike Williams.
Mike Williams are playing. I know he might get a little of Diggs, who did a good job against Evans, but I don't care. And then it's Barkley or Williams. Man, this is tough. I guess I'll go Williams here. They're both playing limited roles. Barkley's got the tougher matchup, so I'll go with Williams.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then same user, separate question: Javonte Williams or Mike Williams? PPR.
I'm going Mike Williams. I just love him against the Cowboys. The usage last week was phenomenal. Again, we like Javonte. We talked about it earlier. He's in a good spot, but I thought it was a really good sign. They were talking up Mike Williams all preseason in this offense. I'm going Mike Williams.
Yes, healthy Mike. There's where it is.
Yeah, please stay healthy.
Yes, please.
I tweeted out last week. Please, Mike Williams.
And then we've got one more, and we'll wrap it up. We've got Goliday, Pittman, or Mike Williams in flex.
Mike Williams.
Yes. Yes. That is perfect. Clemson Tera is a happy Tera right now, the way that we are talking. All right, guys. We really appreciate you all tuning in. it is game time. We're going to wrap things up. It is time for us to go enjoy the Giants versus the Washington football team. We're hoping for a very good game, and we appreciate you all tuning in this week for our Thursday night pregame preview. Tune in next week again. We will be previewing the game between the Panthers and the Texans. I'm Tera Roberts with Adam Ronis. Enjoy the game, guys.